censorship's about to have a huge change on the internet under the Trump administration, and there are good and bad things to go along with this. Now, here's what happened. Mark Zuckerberg just announced on Instagram that all of the Meta platforms are firing all of their fact checkers.
First, we're going to get rid of fact checkers and replace them with community notes, similar to X, starting in the US.
He is going to embrace the ideals of free speech, which, on the face of it's not a bad idea. And I want to point out that this is a thing that a lot of people on the left and the right seem to agree with. If you actually look on Mark Zuckerberg's post, Taylor Lorenz was talking about how her misinformation tags could be removed. At the same time, Huberman said it was a great idea. My feeling is that platforms have really kind of gone too far over the last, 4 or 5 years, because I have had so much content removed from the internet, and I'm not out there posting misinformation. Let me give you an example. I really want to do a video on the drone war in Ukraine. Like, there are some crazy things happening with death falling from the sky on grenades, how that is fundamentally altering the tactical and strategic landscape in a way that are horrifying. But there is no way I can do a video like that here on YouTube because, well, you're dealing with violence, which is a direct contradiction of some of their main rules. I've even had videos pulled down where I was talking about cellulite and I showed a woman in a bikini. And that bikini shot was considered titillating by a content moderator, I'm assuming in the Philippines, who thought that bikinis were titillating, when I was really talking about the cellulite on the lady's butt. So I don't know how we decided that platforms were supposed to be the arbiters of what is and is not misinformation, what is and is not okay. Now, I understand the legal side of it, you can't show child porn, you can't show murder, you can't show certain things that are obviously illegal. But once they started going one level down and deciding sort of more nuanced things, well, can someone talk about the election? Can someone talk about vaccine science?
But the fact checkers have just been too politically biased and have destroyed more trust than they've created, especially in the US.
A lot of that stuff, both on what we would consider leftist people and right people, they all got labeled as misinformation. YouTube and Facebook and all of these places have these moderators who essentially operate as a shadow government. They have their own laws, they have their own rules, and the rules don't even usually make sense. You can actually look on their guidelines and then talk to their customer service representative and show that you adhered to their guidelines, and they're like, well, whatever. It's like the moderators on Reddit, the least rational moderation folks in the world. They just signed up to be moderators, and then they could just take down your content. Cautiously, I embrace what Mark Zuckerberg is doing here. But there are some caveats. For instance, Casey Feiser, who is someone who I really respect in the tech ethics world, says that this might just be open season for harassment against gay people and queer people, meanwhile providing protections for people on the right.
So for example, right now Meta has a policy against shaming or degrading someone based on their gender identity. I would not be surprised if that's one of those policies that is getting simplified. And third-party academic research into content moderation and online safety does not support this move, and I highly suspect that internal Facebook research does not either.
And that's not free speech. That's just another type of selective bias. And that would be pretty bad. There's also the fact that Mark Zuckerberg, as part of his symbolic move, is moving the moderation teams that do exist in the United States from California to Texas.
We're going to move our trust and safety and content moderation teams out of California, and our US-based content review is going to be based in Texas. As we work to promote free expression, I think that it will help us build trust to do this work in places where there is less concern about the bias of our teams.
Which is that's weird, right? If you're going to choose a neutral ground, why don't you go to New Jersey or Virginia or somewhere that's sort of sort of in between the left and the right versus going from the most liberal state in America to the most conservative one. It doesn't make a lot of sense, and it does make me feel that this could be a harbinger of how right-leaning these platforms could become. It might not be about free speech. It might just be about shutting down liberal viewpoints. Anyway, this all does seem to be decided in the last few weeks when billionaires around the country have met with Donald Trump and are kneeling and they're kissing the ring and they're coming up with the communication strategy. And one thing that I want to point out here is that these billionaires are not always free speech pioneers. For instance, when a cartoonist at the Washington Post posted a cartoon sort of critiquing the fact that the billionaires were all kissing Trump's ring, her comic got cut because Bezos didn't like it. And that doesn't make me feel like this paradigm of free speech is really about free speech. And that's really where I have some misgivings. So, yeah, there are some good things about it. I don't really want to be moderated by these platforms. I want to be able to do my good journalism. What do you think about moderation? Is this a good thing or is this a bad thing? Do you think that the community notes on Twitter, which I don't have much experience with, do you think those work? All right, well, let me know down in the comments. And, welcome and thank you so much for showing up to my back channel. Also, do you like this shirt? It's a meowder cycle.